Being from a developing country in the Caribbean, I was accustomed to seeing images of poverty just about every day. I'd seen enough images of homelessness and hunger and street children, so the topic wasn't as unfamiliar to me as it was for many of my classmates.
When my professor told me I was doing a project about poverty, I thought that it was a very good idea, because I think all of us come from social layers where we haven't really experienced poverty, so it would be a good experience.
Initially, I just was concerned with how we were actually going to speak with those that are actually in poverty.
We chose poverty through conversations with our partners, particularly in the UK and India, because there's been so many economic problems that have come out of the global economic downturn that started in 2008.
Reporters from 4 countries around the world will each tell their story about poverty. 24 hours of live coverage.
From Asian College of Journalism, this was Madhulika Chaturvedi for Pop-Up Newsroom.
My name is Tony, and yes, I have experienced homelessness.
Hi, I'm Momo.
Hi, I'm Joelle.
We are coming from Pop-Up Newsroom.
Pop-Up Newsroom is a temporary virtual newsroom that is run off of mobile media tools, primarily cell phones and some tablets, that uses social media tools for reporting. So Twitter is our main reporting tool.
Just a few weeks before the #Live Poverty project, our professor gave us some assignments about ruin porn and poverty porn. And that was an eye-opener for so many of us.
When I read about poverty porn, that was actually the most beneficial text I think we had the whole semester, because it really got me thinking about how I should portray people as to not exploit them.
How do we cover poverty without engaging in poverty porn?
Throughout the whole project, I was very cautious of what I was going to be posting on social media, what I was going to be making viral, how am I going to portray this group.
There was a blurred line, and that made for an interesting experience.
When I was out there and doing the live reporting, I just constantly had in mind that I'm promoting advocacy, and I'm not writing this so we can get a viewership.
I selected the articles on poverty porn to try to be somewhat provocative. I think that term is not what you expect to be porn, to be associated with poverty, but it's really about the kind of reporting that exploits poverty and makes a spectacle of it, instead of is kind of respecting the people who are in this situation. The issue you run into with this kind of reporting is, are you somehow speaking for people in a way that degrades them? It's very easy to do that, and so by having students prepare ahead of time, we were hoping that they would not fall into that trap, and they would just go out and talk to people and listen to them and find out what they had to say, and not really be judgmental or not tell them, well, you need to be doing this or that, but instead let them have as much of a voice as they could.
The professor put us in pairs for this assignment, and my partner was Alicia. One of our most memorable pre-interviews was at the LA Mission downtown Los Angeles. The streets surrounding the LA Mission for many is the epicenter of poverty in LA. I remember when I first moved to California, and as I toured Hollywood and all the beautiful landmarks, one of the destinations I drove past was an area downtown known as Skid Row. Skid Row is merely a stone's throw away from LA's financial district, less than 15 minutes from the glamorous Hollywood. Yet, it is just blocks and blocks of homeless people, and each night cardboard boxes and blankets serve as makeshift homes. This is just not something you expect to see in America. So for #Live Poverty, Alicia and I chose to do our coverage from the LA Mission, which serves the Skid Row population. We were just as terrified as we were curious. We were getting an inside view from Skid Row, but we had been warned of the dangers. Fights often break out. It could be a pretty terrifying situation.
The most terrifying thing was going to Skid Row and going to downtown LA and actually going out of my comfort zone and stepping into a different world from my point of view. I would never, on my own, probably would have gone to those rough areas of LA.
The 24-hour global project started in the early hours of the morning, California time, which was hours behind Taiwan, India, and UK. The tweets were pouring in and the images were compelling, and I tweeted and retweeted, and it was just an unbelievable experience.
I was very impressed by India and how many different phases of poverty they got to cover. I only had the stereotypical view of poverty in India that you get from the non-profit organizations, so it was kind of a rare gift to be able to see it from the streets of India.
It's important to take Pop-Up Newsroom globally because we live in a globalized world, and it was very important for students to understand what it would be like to work on a project with people in another country. And also for them to understand that whatever is happening in this country is probably somehow related to what's happening in other countries.
The greatest thing I took away from the project was the experience of meeting people that are different than me. When I did the live reporting, I got some kind of negative response from being who I was among a demographic that's very different from me.
What I learned most about it was just to not believe everything that you hear on the news.
Experiencing social media journalism was, of course, among the most important lessons learned, but just shedding light on poverty across the world and seeing how poverty was a common denominator that somehow connected all the countries. The first world and the so-called third world had this one story in common, no matter how rich or how poor the country was.
The project was a success on many levels. We of course got a lot of publicity, and it was written up in Indian newspapers and in Britain. We got social media companies here writing about us, Rebel Mouse in particular. But for me, the most success is that the students themselves gained something from working on this project. And I think when students came back from reporting and were able to talk about what they had experienced, and they were kind of emotional about it, and sometimes what they had experienced had been scary or negative or not what they had expected, but that they went out and they did the stories anyway, and they kind of had to adapt to things they didn't expect. That was the success, is that the students went out and reported these stories despite there being some difficulties, despite there being unexpected obstacles, and that they came to look at the issue on a deeper level. You really can't ask for anything more than that if you're a professor.